Disruptors. It's Michelle. My pronouns are she, her.
And it's Tracy. My pronouns are she, they.
And hi, Carley. We are so glad you're with us and cannot wait to share you such a gem with all of our listeners and fellow disruptors. So
Yay,
babe, we're starting. Oh, sorry. I guess I could let you say
that. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, would you like to say anything else before I just like blab on as everyone is well used to?
No, I love the No. We're in a different time zone. We're thousands of miles away. I'm surprised we're able to make it together today.
Yeah.
No, I'm Carley. Thank you so much for the intro. She, her, and just so happy to be here.
Super cool. Speaking of your comment on the miles and miles apart, but still the sweet coming together. I love that we're going to be talking about some tech today on the podcast. So that was a lovely little segue or a little bit of a teaser. But before we get into any of that amazing conversation, let's start off with you, Carley, like we do with every guest. You all listen, so you know.
Yeah. So, well, it's great to have you, Carley. I love and adore you like my little sister.
Love
you bring sparkle and joy to my life for so many years. But tell us, starting off with the question we always start off with, what does disruption mean to you?
Yeah. No, this is a hard one with all the amazing answers people have given. And I think disruption on a broader sense to me is really like creating a transformational change, whether that's in your own life, your generations before you, and the experiences and behaviors in that line, the corporate world, any kind of like traditional or long-standing practice, and really introducing new, like more efficient, more fun, more unconventional, more safe, more inclusive solutions. And I think this past year, especially myself personally, doing a lot more therapy and looking at my childhood and looking at past generations, and then also leaving the tech corporate world. Tracy and I were both at Uber together, and also doing that in my entrepreneurial work life. It's been a lot, but it's also just been life-changing. And yeah, I think that's what disruption means to me.
I love
Shout out to those who support us throughout our disruptive episodes.
No, that's a great definition and summary of more of a totality of how we could disrupt and how we can really make a difference. But I think you hit on something that, disruption also kind of starts with ourselves too. And you've done your own work, and sounds like you continue to do your work, and that's so important. So do you remember, I have to ask you, do you remember the first tech product that we worked on together when I used to come downstairs at 1455 and give you a hard time? And that was like the first disruptive tech product we worked on at Uber. Do you remember?
I remember we had to launch the safety bundle. I don't know if you're it was like a full bundle of products. I remember you and I never worked together. And we're okay, we have to launch this complete safety. And I don't know if you're thinking of a particular one in that bundle, but in every country in the world, and create a comms plan and introduce. And I was just joined the safety team, and I'm I don't even yeah. But yeah, I'm remembering the safety bundle, but now I'm what features were in that bundle?
Yeah, exactly.
That totally sounds like my experience in tech too, where it's I just want you to do this in every country in the world.
Yeah.
And by tomorrow, that'd be great. You're okay.
Yeah,
make this
happen. Prep all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And Carley had just joined the safety team, and I don't know, I adore her. She was just a bundle. She was a bundle of light and sparkle herself. So it was, but yeah, it was the safety bundle. And I don't remember all the different things in it either, but I just remember one of the first times that I met you was going to talk about that. The initial, we had to develop, with every tech product that was not only working with the engineers, the product folks, all those things, but then working with the marketing teams and the comms teams and policy teams and everybody who came together, to work on those things. And Carley had just joined the safety team and was jumping right into it. So It's a great memory.
Yeah. No, cruise teaming. It was. What was that?
No, you go ahead.
No, I mean, just like you're working on these products that the goal is to save lives, right? I mean, at the very little peace of mind, which is huge, right? Peace of, you can always call someone, we're always there. There's someone, your loved ones are tracking your ride, but like just making sure that, people understand how to use these and we communicate that clearly and succinctly. Yeah. Like it was a lot of pressure, but also such a rewarding feat. And I'm just so glad we got to work on it together. So I was like the product marketing person doing more of like the marketing. Of course, Tracy was the comms lead. So it was just,
that was awesome.
So fun to work on it with you.
I was just wondering if like anything that stands out in your mind is she would apparently like, haul down the steps to come give you a hard time. Was she like always in her cool leather jacket?
That came later. So we did a photo shoot. I will send these photos over. I like thought, okay, so before I had this like weird, where I was like wanted to be a photographer and I would take photos at like rich 1-year-old birthdays in Los Angeles. And then I still, when I moved to San Francisco, I was like, I'm still a photographer. So we needed photos for something. And I remember, do you remember this, Tracy? I took like horrendous photos of like you and Kate Parker, like at like a conference room.
I don't remember.
Okay,
No,
I thought I would, and then we eventually hired a professional. But Tracy was wearing a blazer.
I always wore nice jackets. I always wore nice
blazer. It wasn't the leather jacket era.
No, yes. Yeah, I wore nice blazer jackets, and I always had my shoes were always on point. So that's what it was.
I remember the outfit. I think like jeans, a blazer, and your hair was probably this length. Yes. For the listeners, it was actually shoulder length. So
was this pre or post bangs?
I need to find these photos. I think
you do, Carley.
I think they were like wispy side things happening.
Wispy. Oh my god! I guess I was at Uber maybe 6 months before I cut my hair off. I can't remember. Yeah, it was 6 to 8 months.
I remember. I don't know if you know, Tracy. I remember I met you very quickly in the Uber LA office. You won't remember that, but I loved your accent. Yeah. And you were very kind. And I think you were visiting Ava. But then, then I moved to San Francisco.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway.
That's right.
Well, I knew that you were a gem. And as I said, I was so excited to share you, but I am more excited now that you can share with us some of these photos, hopefully, in the posterity of like, the Tracy Breeden.
Yeah. We've known each other.
I'm taking notes of everything I need to send. The pug photos and the Tracy Breeden.
I'm also making notes.
Circa 2017.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Let's move on.
All right. So, Carley, doing all of our good work and homework. I know that there was another kind of element, I think, to how you described what disruption means to you. And part of it was your point about moving past fear, right? And something we've talked about on this podcast a lot, which is, you're always going to have, I think most people at least are always going to have an element of fear, right? It's about the change. It's about the bigness, the disruption. But you do talk in your definition about, really just moving past it, which I think is such a beautiful concept. And I have it on good authority that I do believe you're one of my like spirit sisters in making bold moves. For anybody who's listened to the pod, you have heard probably ad nauseum about a lot of the big, bold changes I've made in my life. And in large part, right, to your point, moving past a big old mountain of fear and doing a lot of that. You in particular, my dear, stepped out of your corporate tech career, right? Uber being a really, really fascinating and I think just really like, obviously worldly impactful tech company, quit your stable job to start a company and move to a whole new country. In the middle of a pandemic too. So just a few bold moves there. What made you decide to make all these changes? Number one, simultaneously, and during something as big as a global pandemic. Like, what were you feeling at the time you were making those decisions?
Yeah. So when I was at Uber, it was almost like I don't know, I've never been to business school, but it just felt like I could develop all these skills and just try things and go and work on different products and different teams. And I was a journalism major. I was in advertising before this. Like I never really thought about entrepreneurship. But when I was at Uber, I was on the team that launched Uber Eats. Back in the day, it was called Uber Fresh, led by Jason Droege, and was like, oh, I can actually start something, like build something. And that was kind of in the back of my mind while I was at Uber. And I've always really loved thrifting and secondhand, and it's just been such a joyful passion of mine. So while I was at Uber on the side, like every weekend, I started writing a blog I just created for fun called Thoughtful Flamingo. And while I was writing it, there was just this insight or this idea that just would not leave my mind. And it was just like, no, I don't know if the word like gnawing at me, or I just like could not stop thinking about it. So I've never I've always worked in corporate, huge companies, but there was this thing in the back of my mind. And then my partner, my boyfriend, Chris, who maybe Tracy and I will tell a funny story involving him later on in the podcast, but we just caught up about pre-taping. He also worked at Uber, and he was supposed to be in Amsterdam for 1 year. And he loved it so much that he was like, hey, like, I'm thinking maybe I stay here. And it kind of was, looking back, the push I needed to leave Uber and just like go after this idea, even though it sounds kind of crazy because, you know, if you're working on a startup and you're in Silicon Valley, that's usually the place you want to be. The investors are there, the ecosystem is there. But really, I kind of almost needed this push where like I couldn't work at Uber anymore. You know, the safety team, the communication team, the marketing team, they're all hubbed in Amsterdam, in San Francisco. So it was almost like that move. It was scary, but it kind of allowed me to like face fear head on and be like, just go for it. So that happened. And then I was like, I can just work on this idea, see what happens. Then this was right before COVID hit. So I kind of had all these kind of crazy things happened at once, but I really just dove in and tried not to think about kind of the circumstances and what was happening and just went for it. Yeah. I don't know if that helps answer the question.
Yeah, no, do you remember? So that feels, again, very like sisterly to a lot of what I've experienced. Do you recall at the time? I mean, I anticipate, you know, as we did a bit of a shout out to those who support us as professionals through all of our disruption, right? Therapists and, you know, and coaches and whatnot. Do you remember, though, back in the day when you were facing this fear and making these bold moves, did you have a practice that you had in place, or, you know, or something that helped you, like you said, or like, I'll paraphrase, sorry, stay really grounded and, you know, outside of that fear space?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Even when I experience jet lag, when I go from like the US to back here, it's like, I have to have like my structure and my things in place. Meditation has always been a big one for me. I have another practice now that I wasn't doing then that I'm very thankful that I'm doing now, but running has always been something that just allows me to get out of my head a bit more. There's all these things happening. I had a lot of anxiety when I first moved to Amsterdam. You know, I was waking up every day in San Francisco with a well-paying job, and now I'm here. I don't have friends. I'm not making money. I'm starting this company. I don't know where to find a co-founder. So yeah, it was really important running was a big one for me. I had a therapist at that time. And I also started seeing a business coach, Nan Watts, who Tracy and I are very close with. So I think between coaching and running and meditation, that really helped ground me. And then I stayed really close with my friends. And I mean, Tracy, we've of course stayed in touch back in the US. So that was really helpful. Just even though they couldn't visit because COVID had hit, just really keeping up monthly, even weekly calls which I actually still do, which I think has been really huge for me, just ground myself in who I am and the people who know me best. Yeah.
I love that. It's like I would say roadmap. I couldn't have said it. I mean, I don't know if either of us could have said it better. Side note, we all love our Nan on the Disruption podcast and in real life. So shout out to Nan Watts, who will be making an appearance on the pod as well, or hopefully many, many appearances those are in the works. And then I promise, as I do often to our listeners and certainly to our lovely guest, I will quit talking in a moment. But I have one more thing that I desperately have to dig into and shout out. And that is your blog that you started, and in particular, Thoughtful Flamingo. The flamingo is very much my spirit animal. Tracy and I are in the process of getting some, fresh ink, and my my left arm sleeve is like a big ass flamingo. So I have to ask you, and I had this planned, Carly, to ask you, where did Thoughtful Flamingo come from? Do you have a connection to the flamingo as well? Because I also, by the way, use running to ground myself and kind of get out of my head. So I just feel like maybe we're the same person.
I know. And we need Tracy, bring Michelle to Amsterdam. We need to run, frolic through the tulips and find some flamingos.
Yeah.
So anyways, all of that. Where did you come up with that? I love it.
Yeah, it's so fun. I need to bring up, I'm thinking of starting a Substack because I'm getting really back into writing. I was a journalism major. I've always loved writing. But Thoughtful Flamingos, I did it for fun, and I really miss that. But the flamingo was I wanted it to be a mix of because I started the blog because I thought I didn't think people thought sustainable fashion meant also fun. So I was like, what is the most fun, lively, just a beautiful pink animal? And the flamingo came to mind. And then thoughtful was you can still have fun. You can disrupting, right? You can still have fun. You can be unconventional, but you're doing it for a purpose. So that's where Thoughtful Flamingo came. And you know what? It's I remember I printed out business cards actually with Thoughtful Flamingo on it. I need to find them because I went to it's called the Sustainable Fashion Forum, which actually helped me develop my being there was really big moment for me for deciding to work on Lucky Sweater. But I was passing out my Thoughtful Flamingo business cards. It was so much a part of my identity, and now I'm oh, maybe I should bring it back.
Well, I
know it was very cute. I was going to ask you if you picked it up in Palm Springs with your grandma or something. There's all those.
That's a really good. I actually really love.
They're everywhere.
I actually really love. I also want to write about mall. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and I have a very interesting relationship with consumerism. I love the mall was my happy place, and but I am a very big critic of our overconsumption lifestyles in society. But I love the plastic flamingos that are in that nostalgia that people have in their front yards in 1950s USA. And I love all those, even though I'm I'm in this weird in between, I question my choices and want to be thoughtful with consumerism, but I love the these nostalgic pieces that really represent Americana and just, So the flamingo also is a nod to that too, probably somewhere in my head.
It is. No, it is. Which incidentally, just to educate, everyone on the pod. So there's very much the, I would say, deeply ingrained value of balance within the flamingo, right? It's it's kind of having that foot in the past and also in the present, but also, maintaining that balance in between.
Yeah.
Which has been hugely impactful for me in my transformation journey recently, for other conceptual reasons. But what you're saying right there, it fits, directly with. So I just love it.
That's amazing. I could. I want to also hear more about flamingos, but now I'm gonna bring it back. We'll see. I want to see the tattoo.
Yeah, you'll have to send her the tattoo. And then we're getting ready to go to Bisbee this weekend, and there's a house there. We need to send Carly the picture. There's a house there that has.
I heard Bisbee is this. I just heard about Bisbee this past 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's a cool city in southern Arizona that's it's the weirdest city. Before Austin picked up that term, it was they had the term.
I know a lot of artists are moving and living there. City. Yeah,
it's super cool place. But there's this house there that has flamingos all throughout, and then they have flamingos all over their car. And so we got to send you a picture of that because it's super cute.
Oh my
gosh. It's fun. But to switch from flamingos, because I'm sure everybody's enjoying the conversation about flamingos, but they are fun. We love some flamingos. And I love that Michelle also has a flamingo now on her arm, which is so her. She's a total flamingo.
Cool.
But can you tell us about your clothing app, Lucky Sweater, and explain to listeners, what the concept is around the app, and tell us how it works?
Yeah, of course. So Lucky Sweater is a community first, highly curated, right now secondhand trading app. So basically, we kind of how I came up with this or saw this was I was starting to see a lot of these communities form, whether it was on Facebook or Instagram or Reddit in person, where people weren't just trying to find things. They were really trying to find people who shared their values, their purpose, their passions too. And a lot of times those are tied to artifacts or things that represent those passions and purposes. Like maybe a plastic flamingo if you're a collector of like 1960s and 50s memorabilia. But yeah, so
Yeah.
basically, instead of like going to an app where you just find a thing, you join your community first. You connect with like-minded people who love the same things you love, no matter how weird, I'm using quotation marks, or different it is from someone you live next to or your friends. Like this is your safe space to really come together and geek out around the brands, the vintage items, the handmade pieces you love. So right now we have 3 communities that are live. Our goal is to really be like your community for anything. We have a space for people who love sustainable fashion, small batch brands. So people are sharing advice around that. We have like a full discussion section. We have inspiration. So, and then we have a place where you can trade and share this closet together. And then we have a group for vintage and then also for makers. It's called Me Made. So you can share handmade like knitted sweaters, crocheted items, people quilts, and then you can also share supplies, which is really amazing. Because people in the crafting community always have leftover supplies. And, you know, you don't just come to get things, you really come to connect around them. And my vision for the world, and hopefully I want to play just a small part of this, is instead of going to Amazon or pressing buy now or getting something brand new from a big box store, like you always think, oh, hey, like, does this already exist in my friend's closet, in my community? And how can we rely more on each other and be a little less lonely and consume a little bit less too? Yeah.
I love that. I love the aspect of building community and how important that is, and how you weave that. And I also love hearing that, you know, building community is also about building safe spaces for people to come together and to connect. So, you know, can you also speak to a little bit of that? I mean, you stepped into a very unknown space at Uber when you stepped into working in safety marketing, and then coming and connecting with somebody who, like me, who's been in safety, you know, pretty much my entire career. But how is it that, how have you seen how important it is that in order to build community, you also have to have a safe space for somebody to be a part of? And what does that
Yeah.
mean to you at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's double like the power. So like there's been studies, and I can send these. Like when you actually share a physical thing, you're building trust. Like, okay, I gave this to you, gave this to me, and it's like so powerful. You know, our members are not just sharing advice and typing and chatting. They're actually sending each other items. So it's even more, the payoff is so much bigger. We have friendships growing. You know, you can see the stories behind the clothes. There's actually a woman in Tucson, Erin, who's amazing, did a whole like storytelling session with Fest. I don't know if you've heard of them. They create safe like queer spaces to do storytelling, and Erin's story was all about finding friendship and community and everything through clothes with Lucky Sweater. So it's big. It's like there's such an amazing payoff because items are involved in this added value of trust. But with that, you need to make sure there is safety. Will this person send me the item? Do I trust that, you know, I'm sending them something? Will they send something back to me? We've had people on our app share photos of their bodies for the first time postpartum that they haven't shared with anyone except their family. You know, they're sharing about their body struggles, and maybe this is the first time they feel comfortable putting on this type of clothing. So that's so beautiful. But yeah, like you said, you have to make sure they feel trust and safety. So a few things we do is from the beginning, we launched our community guidelines. We have our values clearly written out in the app. You have to agree to them. And we show them before you join the communities. Sound familiar? Because we worked on community guidelines at Uber. So from the beginning, like even before you can do anything, you read them and you see them. We have moderators for each community. Just amazing folks I meet with every month. We have our Slack channel. They really help answer questions. They moderate the discussion spaces. We actually approve all of the items to make sure, they're from the right brands, that they're, there's enough photos. We can make sure it is the actual item itself. What else do we do? Oh, to join it's not like, to actually join, you have to either be invited or share just a simple question with us about, why you want to be a member. But that we think that also helps. People who want to be on the app actually hopefully care, and you can't just join out of nowhere. So those are a few things that we're working on. And then support has been a really big thing. So Tanya and myself actually handle support. And, if something does go wrong with the trade, if it doesn't get delivered, we're there if you need us. So those are a few of the things we're working on.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And Tanya's my amazing co-founder.
Shout out to Tanya. Shout out to Tanya. So
that's right. What's been the biggest challenge that you guys have faced in standing up Lucky Sweater? I mean, even in the trust and safety space, or just like really anything, it'd be interesting to dig in a little bit there.
Yeah. I think like what as I say, it's like, how do you keep such a special community and, make sure everyone who's joining is thoughtful and wants to be part of this community while scaling? We're building a business. So it's like, how do you grow these community spaces, develop new ones while keeping that trust and safety? And I think we've done a good job of making sure we've built in tech that helps us scale. Our moderators, like I mentioned, support processes. We're actually launching a new tool for people to suggest features to us. So I think that's been just the hardest, like thinking, how do you scale and gain the traction while keeping a safe and welcoming space at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, that in talking about your biggest challenge so far, like you just went immediately to your most core value, right? Instead of how do we get investors? How do we make more money? How do we, it's not even how do we scale, but it's how do we do the things we need to do because we are a business, but really keeping community at its core. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So
yeah, we also had I was gonna say one last thing, like we're also, working on monetizing. When we first launched, it was a free service. So, we're trying to be better and see how we can, scale the business piece of it while involving our community too, and seeing how through roundtables and how through being more open with them about what we're doing next. That's really important for us too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. To me, that sounds a lot like disruption as well, right? Where you're really not looking at maybe some of the more standard or static models of monetization that I'm sure you've run into, again, being in Silicon Valley and kind of working for, one of the world's biggest apps, even in its earliest stages, but instead going out to your communities that are so important to the founding principles you have and saying, like, what are your ideas? Like, how do we do this in a way that, like you were saying before, right, upends traditional or norm approaches to this, this space?
Exactly. Yeah. And we've, we've made mistakes. We've learned, we've launched things when we were thinking of doing a trade fee per trade. And we brought that to our community and they gave us great feedback. Like, we don't think this is maybe the way to go. So we took a step back and we're going to talk with them and, see what could actually make sense and even be more innovative and even build a better company for them and for us too. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, awesome. I think it's probably at least to me, and I'm sure to everyone else, like very obvious, right? That what you're doing and the core values that you are really holding as most foundational as you do it just come from a place of really deep passion, Carley. So one thing I love to, not to constantly drive us back to the flamingo, but however,
I love it as a theme for this. Yeah.
On your Thoughtful Flamingo site, I did see where you state, I'm a former fast fashion addict and current sustainable fashion entrepreneur and advocate. This might be a little older than maybe you want me to read out.
But I'm like, someone still reads it. Thank you. I know we're doing research for this, but
my goal is to show that when we quit fast fashion, rewear and repair our clothes and invest in pieces we love, we discover our true style, save money, and stop the waste. And like, I just feel like that's such a beautiful encapsulation of what we can do with fashion and get outside of, yes, this like Amazon, like click and buy, right, mentality and paradigm. So where does your passion come from? Is it, I mean, where does this passion for sustainability and like creation through recreation, you know, in a way come from?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely starts in my childhood, like all of our good and bad purpose and traumas. But I I'm from Los Angeles, and I always say like Los Angeles could be the most diverse, one of the most diverse cities on the planet, or like such a bubble. You know, it's urban sprawl. It's you can be so easily not see other types of people. You're in your car, but at the same time, there's just so much diversity, so many different types of people, social and economic classes. Anyway, I went to a public school until I was about 12 years old, and people's parents, there was so much diversity in class and everything, and I never really thought about how much do my parents earn versus this person's parents, or do I have the nicest purse, or do I have this brand. And then in fifth grade, when you know you're starting going through puberty, there's the mean girls, there's all those things. I transferred to a private school, and there I was like, whoa, this is so, I really questioned, okay, am I buying the right Juicy Couture sweatsuit? Do I have a rainbow Louis Vuitton bag? What car am I driving to school when I was getting older? And I was so obsessed with just trying to keep up and trying to have all of these things to make myself feel worthy. And then I'll never forget, a group of my friends, we went to the Beverly Center in Beverly Hills, and we were introduced to, I won't say by who, a girl we were friends with, to like Forever 21 and all the fast fashion, fast fashion stores. And at these places, it was a way for me to keep up, in quotes, because it was so cheap and I could like keep up with the trends I thought were going to make me cool or make myself feel good, because it was the fast fashion world and like I said, cheaper and making new things every week, every day. And I was just miserable in this mess. I didn't feel like myself. I really hated this kind of cycle I was getting into, and just not feeling like enough. And then I remember I asked my dad, I was like, can we go to Rodeo Drive? I want to go to Rodeo Drive. Like, who's this 13-year-old kid being like, I want to go to Rodeo Drive. I want to, and like, I'm not gonna, like, my dad was like, no, how about we go to Melrose? Yeah. How about we go to Melrose Avenue? My dad's from Los Angeles. So we like, you know, back in the day, he was on Sunset Boulevard doing all the things. And he was like, I learned like what a thrift store was. And if you're not familiar with Melrose Avenue, it's a avenue in Los Angeles. There's like the Fairfax Flea Market. There's a lot of cool thrift and vintage stores there. And I was like, this is so amazing. I can buy these. It's so much cooler than a luxury store or fast fashion. I can find unique things no one else has and find these gems. And at the same time, I started taking sewing classes in 8th grade and learned how to make my own things. And I just found that it just flipped. Everything flipped. Instead of clothes being these things that made me feel horrible, they were things that I could express myself through. So that was like my personal story. And then as I was learning about how garment workers are treated in unsafe circumstances, so little pay, even in the US, that also was something that will talk, like, broke my heart, and just how toxic the system is from when the thing is made to even the person wearing it and buying it. I was just like, I hate this. So
yeah. That's such a great story. What would you tell, like, I mean, because it hasn't changed, right? To a certain extent, like
Oh
going
yeah,
into
of course.
middle
Yeah,
school,
totally.
right? There's still that pressure, right? There's still that pressure to like have the shoes, have the shoes my friends wearing, have the clothing, like and we're in a space too where there's a lot of diversity as far as the school system and public school, and as far as like who has a whole lot of money versus little money, vice
Yeah.
versa. Like there's all these like social pressures that come on, particularly in middle school. Like, what would you tell the young Carley today, or how would you influence like you're influencing a lot of people who are using your app and who are coming into the space who have a shared passion and who have, a shared goal, right? In utilizing this to really build community, but also build a better world. Like, what would you tell those young people if you were invited to like speak to them today? Like, what would you say to them, or what would you say to the parents? Your dad did something that just doing one thing had a huge impact. It actually helped you pivot to a different direction, right? Like, what would you tell the parents today? Like, what's the best thing you could do for your kids going into middle school to really get them into the space of sustainable fashion and away from this like fast fashion trend and this trend of like I got to have all these things and wear all these things. What would you think is the one thing? Would it be that? Would it be take your kids to a thrift store and like introduce them to that? Maybe introduce them to the harms of the space. Educating. Is it around education and awareness? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think like what I think with anything, what really got me in like with the disruption definition is like just like how much, and it sounds like simple, like how much more fun like actually dressing this way or expressing yourself this way can be. Like I think a lot of times I get turned off when it's like it feels scary, like you have to do this because the world's ending. Like I like that's 100% true, and we have. But I think showing people like how cool it is and how fun it is. I mean, that's what would
Yeah.
I think a 13-year-old would like. I got to make a pair of pants, and I got to make a reversible. I made a vest that one side was Hello Kitty and the other side was John Deere, and it had like Hello Kitty, but a vest. Like this 13-year-old kid is wearing this like heinous vest around.
Please
But
tell me you still have
I
it.
never it's somewhere. It's definitely somewhere. But I think one thing we want our app to do is like be just as fun as like browsing and as easy as browsing like Shein or going to the mall with friends like we did back in the day. I think you have to start with like it has to be enjoyable. And I also think I am a big user of TikTok. And people, there are a lot of that's caused a lot of micro trends where you can never keep up. But there's really amazing creators. There's this one challenge, and I forget their name, but 75 hard style challenge where there's really cool creators who are showing younger people how much fun like thrifting is, making your own clothes are. So I just think like showing them it's fun and having role models who can show that, I think is what's really helpful, and not scaring them. I think too.
Yeah.
Because
I
that
think
could
that
turn you
that's
off pretty fast as a young
Yeah. Well, you know
person.
what? That's so much you too. Like I think about like how much you can that balance of like being able to really influence somebody to do the right thing, or without scaring them totally with the harm, right? The harm message, like making it fun. And I think that's one of the things you did really well at Uber. Like you made
Oh,
every day fun. I mean, you're full of fun and energy and all of those things. And also I loved what Carly always wore cool stuff. Like you're always like looking at what Carly wore. Like she was already kind of in that space, and you could tell the influence, and always talking about it, because it's like she was doing her day job, but there was always on the side her message and her heart and all of those things that just came out even in her personality. But I love that in like, you can make it fun, and it really attracts people to it. And it before long, they're doing something that's very powerful and meaningful that they may not even realize that they could do or be a part of, because you made it seem like, hey, this can be fun, and it's actually not as hard as you think it is, and don't let me just like scare you with the ugly side of it, right? So I think that's
sounds
great.
like balance, like a flamingo.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, like I think I'm a perfectionist, and that's something I'm working on. But like it's not fun for me if I can't also buy like something I just saw and I'm just like, that is the coolest bag. I have, you also like, I'm staring at this pencil case that has ladybugs on it that I got at Target. Like
Yeah.
you also have to like give yourself a break a little bit to show compassion. My closet's still probably half fast fashion because that's part of my story, and I still wear it because actually there's a leopard print. I usually wear it for podcasts. I should tell Andrew. A blue leopard print sweater, turtleneck sweater that I got with our friend Andrew from Uber when we went to H&M in after we went to the White House in DC. Anyway, that was a good story. But yeah, it's just like, have fun. We're gonna make mistakes, but yeah, disrupting should be fun, right?
Yeah. No, it totally should. It totally should. So, well, one of the things that we're also connecting, a lot of the podcasts over the next few months to also some of the themes that I talk about in my book that's going to be released in June of this year. Which is very much focused on individual change and social change. And one of the themes that I really talk about in the book is that people are always chasing purpose, and they're always like, how can I find what my purpose is? And they spend a lot of money trying to figure out what purpose is. And I tell people it's actually like it's right there where you're at, and it's something that repetitively comes to you. And it's something that breaks your heart. And if you look at like, why is this thing keeps coming to me and it's breaking my heart, that in that there is something calling you to action. And so I would love, to hear more a little bit, because I think that, you really embody this, where and you can speak to that, like, what was it about this space that was really breaking your heart, and how did it kind of like keep coming to you? And then your intuition was really calling you into this space. So can you talk a little bit about that, about like, how was it and what about this was breaking your heart? Because a lot of people, like, they think purpose sounds really big, and they also think about creating impact in the world around them is really big, and how can I make a dent in like this really big problem that is connected to fashion? But there was something that was that was breaking your heart and that was calling you to this space. Can you speak to that a little bit, and how you chose to lean in? Because I also speak about how a lot of times it keeps coming, it keeps pulling, the currents of your heart keep pulling you that way. And a lot of people see it, and they see that it's big, or they see that it's that, and they just turn and walk away. But if you turn and walk towards what's breaking your heart, pathways and opportunities will open for you to create change. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. And a quick plug, I read Tracy's book, and I cried a few times, and I love this chapter because I think like there's this like Silicon Valley like myth, like entrepreneurs or people going after and starting their own thing, like they have to change the world. And I felt like it's just like, I also think that kind of gets your ego too involved. Like you're like we're all gonna play our part, and it's really about and I think that's really daunting and really scary. And then you're like, well, my idea is just this little idea, or my purpose, or what breaks my heart is this thing, and it's not going to be the next face. It's like, that's not like, you matter, and what you're doing will make a difference. So I first want to I struggle with that a lot.
Yeah.
And even just affecting one person is in changing their mind, or inspiring them, or even like, I'm learning this more and more, like inspiring myself and expressing myself and doing it just for me is even important. Anyway, but back to like breaking your heart. I love that because it keeps it something that's doable and you can really identify with and go after it. But yeah, I think, why did this break my heart? Is that the core of the question? I like already.
You know, what was it about this that like was breaking your heart, that kind of drew you to it? And what was it that really, caused you to like take action to step into that?
Yeah. I think, starting a lot like with myself, I think like my like younger self, my inner child or whatever is, I really saw myself as such a creative, weird, dressed in whatever clothes. I'll never forget, like in 7th grade, my friend Priya and I, we came to school as drag queens, and all of our friends were dressed as Barbie dolls. And there's nothing wrong with Barbie, as we all know. We love Barbie, but like there was just something a little off with we're like just, and I like love that part of myself so much. And I think getting swept up in this trend cycle and trying to keep up, and money equals power, and just in control, and it was my just how that made me feel, and just younger Carley in my inner child, and wanting to free her from that. So it sounds selfish, but I think that's where it started. And then I think what also has broken my heart is we're stuck in this consumer cycle, and it's really created like this loneliness. There's this larger loneliness piece to it too. Like instead of, we all know connection and developing these strong personal relationships are actually what brings us happiness. I mean, there's like Harvard just came out with a study about this last year. Like it's proven, but we've been taught over and over again that buying, this is going to treat yourself, or like this will make you happy, and that is like, I think another big piece that just breaks my heart, and how like individualistic society is, and how, our communities are eroding. That also is a big piece of it for me. And then I think the third thing is just the women's role when it comes to garment making and textiles, and specifically women in the garment workers in the US, in Los Angeles, where I'm from, in Bangladesh, around the country, just how little value their amazing work is given, and how little safety all people have within this in this world is something that later on, as I learned more about it, started to break my heart. So just, I think all three of those things, and how consumerism and has played a role in all of that, like there needs to be another way. So it was really important to me that what I was working on wasn't just another way to buy and sell used things, but it really put community at the center too.
Yeah, and those things they're all big. So what gave you the courage to think you could do something impactful and meaningful in that space?
Yeah. I think what's helpful, and like what I tell and when I talk about the other entrepreneurs on similar path to me, and we talk about, is like, I did see that there was a real problem and something that needed a solution, because people were already hacking together like Instagram pages. We worked really closely with the founders of this Instagram page called Sell Trade Slow Fashion, Mariah. She's one of our moderators to this day. I talked to her last week. Like we saw these moderators. I'm talking to the head of the Patagonia Buy Sell Trade group. We met a few years ago. Like there are all these moderators on Facebook already doing this and trying to hack it together. So thanks to them and their spending time with me, it gave me the kind of like reassurance that, okay, there could be a solution. There could be something that is here that could help them. So I think it was finding that there is a more like concrete, focused problem area, and even more focused than that, like an actual group who was willing to test with us, even when I was building the app. Like they came on this app that I built. And as you know, Tracy, I'm not a technical person. So that was like, I was like, whoa, there's something here. And then with that, I was able to find my co-founder and raise money and start building.
Well, I have to say that I'm so proud of you. I've always been proud of the person, the human being you are. You're such a beautiful human
Mm.
being. You have such an amazing heart, and I have to say, look at what that courage did to step in and do what you did. Certainly, you did it with help, but you took action, and you've built now a community and brought together a community of thousands upon thousands of people, and that was something that you have done and created. So all of those stories that you tell us about and the community that's been built, certainly it's been due to a lot of efforts and a lot of people and a lot of support, but you have a big role in that. And I hope you take a chance to take a step back and say, look at that, like I have built a community of people who care about these same things that break my heart and who've come together and who are really creating bold change in this space. So I'm just so proud of you. And I
Oh,
wish I could reach all the way across to Amsterdam and give you a big hug and tell you how amazing, how special you are. And don't stop doing what you're doing. The universe has certainly got your back, and you're doing
oh.
big and wonderful, beautiful things that are creating impact.
No.
So,
Well, thank you. Yeah. When you're in it day to day, I'm sometimes like, we don't have a mill. Like, we need to still figure out how to make this thing make money. Like, what are we? Like, what are we? Am I crazy? Like, so, like, I think about all that. Like, I quit my corporate job years ago. Like, well, I really appreciate that. Cause sometimes you feel like when you're disrupting or not doing the typical 9 to 5 come, I don't know, like I don't question anyone's choices, but when you kind of go this route and it's scary and you never know what's going to come from it, like I do really appreciate that. Cause sometimes I'm like,
yeah.
why did I move to a different country and quit my job and all of those things? So
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you.
just remember, all those voices and all those things, you just keep pushing them back, because
Yeah.
had you not stepped in, this may have never happened the way it has happened. So, and had you not made those choices and pushed back all
Yeah.
those voices that tried to convince you like it wasn't worth it, or it's not going to happen, or it's not going to make a difference, because even if it did end tomorrow, guess what? You built a community of people who may remain in community from now on because of the actions
Yeah.
that you've taken. But I don't think that it's going to go that way. I think it's going to continue to expand and grow because of the person and the people who are behind
Mm.
it. And so I just adore you, and it's so amazing to have been a part of your journey and to continue to be a part of your journey. So,
And look,
Oh,
I
I
say
feel the
stop
same, Tracy.
questioning.
mm,
Like, stop questioning whether you're crazy and just embrace it. You are. And so are
I
we.
am.
And so
Yeah.
are so
Right.
many
I'm
that's
gonna,
right.
thank
That's
you.
right.
Yeah. Embrace it.
I'm
Know
trying
that
to
that
find
is,
this.
yeah, that's the
No,
root.
keep
So I
going.
love it.
Yeah.
Thank
No,
you.
I
I
mean,
was
I
trying
think
to
that
find
there are
this.
so many people who like are crazy as well or want to be crazy. And so, I mean, I think similar to Tracy's question, and then
Yeah.
I'd love to hear, Carly, what you're about to say. Like, if you're trying to find something that we can like help the rest of our crazy, wannabe listeners embrace. Like, not what would you tell, maybe 12 or 13-year-old Carly, but what do you tell the listener who's like, I think I'm pretty crazy too, but it's big and it's scary, and will I fail, or I don't even know what to do or how to do it, and am I actually
Mhm.
going to make impact? Like, is it true that the journey starts with the first step? And if so, what is that first step?
Yeah. Um, that's such a good question. I think like there's so many. I'm doing like very tactical, but there are so many. Like trust that thing that is keep rattling in your head. There's something there,
Mhm.
and start.
That thing
There's
that keeps
little
coming back to you, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, Tracy. I found this long text thread, by the way. I'm showing people from Tracy.
What?
It
What?
doesn't.
What?
It was
Oh,
no. I was just like, maybe I'll send it. It's just like probably a really good quote about like you're a star, a meteor, and then I don't know. Tracy was also such a supportive. We had a hard day at Uber, and I'm showing this text that was just so. I mean, just having people like that in your anyway. I love you, Tracy. She sent me such good
I
quotes
know.
and gems, and just like yeah, I would say kind of related to that. Like, there's so much you can start and you can do even while you have your like corporate job. I'm sure, as you both know, like you can start researching, you can start talking to people, you can start seeing if there's something here in this space that you can help find a solution for. Like I did a bunch, I went to like this fashion forum when I was still at Uber on the weekend, and, you know, met with, like, there's still so much you can do, just go and still have that job, or, you know, people are in such different circumstances in your life. And I think one of the biggest things that's been the most helpful for me is having a community of like-minded people also just as crazy. So I did an entrepreneur program called On Deck. I mentioned the ski trip I'm going on, the person organizing it, I met them through that. Just like people who are in it with you, not even people who like are mentors per se, but like people who are also on this journey. And you can just come to them and know that they're just as crazy as you. I think that's super helpful. But anyway, you can get started even while still having a job, or even still there, you can test a landing page. You could start a newsletter, you can start a blog, you can do so many things without having to like feel like you're just leaping off a cliff or something like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so important to have community and know that you're not alone. And once you kind of step out there and you've seen this as like doing those things and connecting with those people, it's like, okay, I'm not in this alone and I'm not crazy. And like, you know, and you can learn from one another. And it just kind of like really builds that, you know, that courage that you need to continue to keep moving forward. Right. So that's an important piece for sure.
You can literally feel it in your body. Right. I mean, I just feel like when I've come across people where, and it may be very different passions, right? It may not be anything that I am like directly honed in on, but it's like that, you know, it's that similar, it's like that soul sister piece, right? That personality aspect, you know, it's like that, just that understanding or level of elevation. Like I can just feel a calmness, like in, you know, that body feel. It's like, you know, it's a very cosmic kind of energy, I think, recognition when you come across people who are just as crazy as you. So those are the people I want to be around.
You feel like the energy. Yeah. And I also even had a chat for, like even just women, there was like 5 of us in this like women identifying entrepreneur chat. And just like, that was also just like this that was a safe space where we could just be very vulnerable. Like, hey, I cried today. Hey, this meeting went horrible. Like that was also just having that outlet, and finding those people who, and it was actually helpful that none of us were working in the same area, because then you don't like, there's not this competition, or like there's diverse problems, and that's even more fun too, I think.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, I love it. I think we're ready to wrap it up. And I think I might have said, years ago that you're a comet, and you're still a comet, you know, out there,
that
like
was
helping
the text
create
I was looking
stars.
For. Crazy.
Yeah, creating stars for, you know, other people to follow along. So I think that's, you know, so important. But thank you.
But you lifted me up so much. I think Tracy was like fighting for me in promotion conversations, like having you and knowing you're always there for me is like, you know, that helped me take the leap too. So the eventual leap. So thank you.
Thank you. I always have your back, always. So forever and ever, right here.
When I need a job, you'll
girl, when I need a job, I'm coming your way. Clearly, like you are on a rocket ship. So
thank you.
I would. I got your back. So I told your mom that too. So I told her I got her. So, you know, I got to meet. I have to say, I got to meet Carley's mom. Yeah, we got brunch together back.
You got brunch with my mom. You took my boyfriend to the red light district. What are you gonna do with my brother now? What are you?
Okay, now you just open that up. So I got to tell the story before we leave, because people are gonna be like, "Oh my God, she took her boyfriend to the red light district." So, you know, the story goes, I was at Uber at the time. We were in Amsterdam. We had an office in Amsterdam, and you had. At that time, Carley had already moved to Amsterdam, but you guys hadn't been there that long, right? I mean, you hadn't been in Amsterdam.
I think actually, I was still in San Francisco. We were on that. I crashed your trip. I was like, did not need to go on that.
Oh yeah, that was when we went to South Africa. Yeah. Okay, so
I was like, I'm going on this trip.
Right. So I had planned this trip for the team. We were going to go meet with all the teams to work on some of our women's safety initiatives. And so we went to South Africa. We made our way to France. We were also in Amsterdam. So while we were in Amsterdam, Chris had already moved to
Yes.
Amsterdam at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Right. So Chris, Carly's partner, had already moved to Amsterdam. It was my first time to meet Chris. So it was so exciting to meet Chris for the first time. And while I was there, I had this idea, which my team was like, oh my God, like, what are we going to do? And I said, we're going to go to the red light district and we're going to interview some of the sex workers there because I want to hear about, how sex workers are treated in Amsterdam. Of course, we had a focus of creating prevention, education programs, and partnerships around preventing sexual assault. So I thought let's go talk to a sex worker in Amsterdam where it is legalized and where they have a lot of protections in place. They're treated much differently. So I take the team into the red light district and Chris comes along with us. And I connected or contacted this sex worker, but found out that she didn't speak very good English. She was fluent in Spanish. And of course, Chris is fluent in Spanish. So I come out of her, area. It's kind of like, they're kind of like salons. If people have been to the red light district, it's set up, it's the businesses. So I come out the door and I said, Chris, you know how to speak Spanish, right? And he was like, yeah. I said, come on, come in. And so Carly and the other team member that were there were like, oh my God, like, what is she doing and what are they doing?
You guys are on for like almost an hour. We're like, okay.
So Chris's first experience with me was going into this space with this woman to sit with her because she had agreed. I told her who I was, if she would be so kind to give me an interview and to talk to me about, her experiences. And she said yes. And so Chris came in, he was amazing and interpreted for her. And I think, it's the best, probably first time meeting story.
Yeah. And you learned a lot. Yeah. It was such a fun. Yeah.
And I just remember Chris just couldn't stop talking about it for a while. I was like, oh my God, that was like so cool. Tracy, did this. So
I love it.
So that's the story. I don't want, it was so much fun.
It's a good story behind it, but the headline is fun. It's like, what?
Yeah.
But
the headline
so nice
causes
to
people to turn. She was amazing, and we got a lot of great information that we were able to, to bring back and speak to. So it was great. But I love and adore you, Carly, and the way we wrap this up. One, thank you for stepping in to, following what was breaking your heart and doing something about it, having the courage to do something about it and create impact and create impact in people's lives. And hopefully, people who listen to this will also be encouraged to, gosh, what's that thing that keeps like coming back to me, is always in my head and I'm always thinking about it. It breaks my heart and I want to do something, but it seems so big, is that you can actually do something about it and you're being called to it for a reason. So what would you like to leave our fellow disruptors with today? You get the final message, the final say.
Oh my gosh. Go get Tracy's book coming out this summer.
Yeah.
I don't know. This sounds like kind of, I was going to say, like, we talked about like what breaks your heart, like just follow that. But I also think like, I don't know, like I even think like leaving this call, like I had a hard day at work today and I'm just like, wow, I feel so I just feel like re-energized. So thank you both. But this sounds like, find your community, find the people who get you, even larger than just like start a company, but like that gives you the foundation and the footing to then like follow that, whatever weird passion or thing you have. And then I think like, I'm not just saying this so I get a good edit, but like find your Tracy, like find that person who's like seen it, who's been through it, who like lifts you up. I mean, like having you at Uber to, Uber is not an easy place, especially dealing with all these, safety law, all we went to Vegas and we met with the police force there, and just like having your guidance and being like, wow, like if Tracy can do this, and if they believe in me, like I can do this too. So find your community, find a mentor, reach out to people on LinkedIn or someone who inspires you. You might be surprised who will want to grab a coffee. So hopefully that's helpful.
I think that's a beautiful message to leave people with. Find your community, find your people, find your person that can, that can be there right there with you.
Find your Tracy.
Find your fellow flamingos.
That's right.
That's right. Find your flamingo.
Yeah. All right. I'm so happy I'm to meet Michelle, and just you all are so inspiring and bold, and I feel very energized after this conversation. So thank you both.